Hey, this is Giacomo Smith from Kansas Smitty's, and you're listening to Live at 5. Before we start today, I just want to remind you that we rely on your support to continue through this period. So remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel and click on the link in the description below to see where you can donate, sign up for a Smitty's membership, or buy our records and merchandise. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Welcome to Live at 5, and we're joined today by my good friend João Caetano. Say hey, João.
Hey everyone. Hey Giacomo.
There he is. And before we talk to João and introduce you to Darcy O'Connor, we're gonna jump right into some music. This is Senhora de Nazaré by João Caetano.
Senhora de Nazaré, rogai por mim. Também sou pescador que anda no mar. Ao largo da vida proei nas vagas sem fim. Vi meu barquito de sonhos sempre a naufragar, e as minhas redes lancei com confiança. Colhi só desilusões num mar ruim, perdi o leme, a esperança, eu não sei remar assim. Senhora da Nazaré, rogai por mim. E as minhas redes lancei com confiança. Colhi só desilusões no mar ruim, perdi o leme, a esperança, e eu não sei remar assim. Senhora da Nazaré, rogai por mim.
Cool. That was João Caetano and his tune Senhora de Nazaré. João is frozen on my screen right now, but Darcy, I think you can see him, right? Oh, okay. Well, I just like to take this moment then to tell people that it's quite difficult to moisturize when you're not allowed to touch your face. But don't let that get you down, because you shouldn't be seeing anyone anyway.
I think
we just... here we go.
I can hear you now.
He's coming back to life. We're back in
with João. Here we go.
It's like Ted Williams being melted. So João, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what you do, because you are the percussionist, amongst other things. Your main gig right now is that you are the percussionist for a band called Incognito, which is an incredible jazz, soul, funk, fusion band that tours all around the world. But what does it mean to be a percussionist and not a drummer? Can you explain to people what the distinction is between being a percussionist and a drummer in a band? A bit about...
Yes, so being a percussionist is basically playing Latin-inspired instruments. Percussion, obviously, in the context of Incognito, percussion is basically everything that you use to make a percussive noise. So you can play percussion with anything. A drum kit is specially the jazz drum kit thing is something that was developed with a hi-hat and a bass drum, and you've got the snare, so you could basically use your foot using a kick drum and your foot using your left foot using a hi-hat and your right foot using the kick drum and your hands to go around the kit. With percussion, you're basically not really using your feet.
Oh, right. Okay.
You can use your feet. You can have other instruments that are used when you use your feet, but like a tambourine or a cowbell, but they're normally not a kick drum or a hi-hat. I guess that's what differentiates, because for me, a drum kit is also a percussion instrument. It's just not it's not seen as percussion. It's seen as a drum kit.
Right.
But you can, like you can play a snare drum in a percussive way.
So can you give us an example of, what kinds of instruments? I mean, I know I see you have some congas behind you there, but what do you, I mean, what kind of colors do you use when you're playing with Incog, or what kind of, like, what's your setup per se?
So I normally have congas, 4 congas, bongos. So those are Latin percussion instruments. So a djembe, for example, is an African percussion instrument. I sometimes use djembes. I use timbales, mainly timbales, which also is a Latin percussion instrument. I use a lot of shakers, which is used a lot in pop music. And I use a lot of tambourines, different styles of tambourine. They're used, pretty much by any music. You'll see quite a lot of pop bands and a lot of acts with a tambourine player. So I use also tambourines, and I love playing tambourine. It's such a hard instrument to utilize, because it can make a massive difference in a band. I know in your band you have quite a lot of use of tambourine.
Yeah, for the kind of more spiritual New Orleans-y stuff, kind of it makes a big difference in coloring, the track, whereas the drums are kind of the drum set would be like kind of a foundational element, whereas the percussion is more of a color,
Yeah.
But how do you work with, I don't know who the drummer is in Incognito, but how do you work with a drummer, to work together? Because I could see potentially, maybe each other getting in the way of what the other one's thinking, or how do you I would guess you have to be quite accommodating to be a percussionist in a big band like that. How big is Incog? Like,
I think we're 12 or 13 of us.
Wow.
So big band. So each one has their own highway, their own street road that they have to be on. But I feel that, jazz music is very inspiring in the sense of finding your space in a band like a massive band like Incognito, because everyone has their road, everyone has their time to solo. And I feel that that's a big thing that jazz has, which is, I'm supporting you whilst you're doing your solo, and I'm listening to what you're doing. And it's very important that as a musician, you're constantly listening to everything or everyone around you. That's where jazz really comes into place for me. It's like listening to a Miles Davis record, or to a Coltrane record, and hearing the band kind of play with that guy, and with whoever's soloing. I feel that when you're in a big band, that's the mindset and the spirit needs to be that. I'm here supporting the band so that the sound is, as a whole, and not me as my part.
Yeah, man, totally. Cool. Well, I think this is a good time to jump into another musical example, and this is from João. You have 2 EPs out. Is that correct?
So I've got an album, Rhythm and Fado, and and an EP, which was released quite 4 years ago, I think, that has 3 tracks. One of them with an orchestra, and a female Fado singer called Maria Emilia Reis.
Amazing.
A future kind of Fado queen.
And so I want to talk to you more about that. That's such an interesting thing that you have going on. But I just want to direct people towards Joao's Spotify page to listen to his album, rhythm in Fado, because amongst other special guests, it has myself and Ferg Ireland, right, from Kansas Smitty's, playing on it. So people can check that out. But Darcy, can you cue up that that next track that we have? And
absolutely. This one is Milo Verde.
Yeehaw.
so you're listening to Live at 5, and that was João Caetano. And João, can you just briefly tell us what, for those of us who don't speak Portuguese, what are you singing about in that, and what's going on influence wise in terms of the sounds and yeah, what's that song about? He's gone frozen.
We've lost João again.
He's preserving himself for after the virus. He's frozen himself.
Am I here?
He's back. He's back. He's melted.
I use that song a lot to practice because it's a song that allows me to work my independence with singing and rhythm. It's a very complex way of in your brain to kind of sing over that rhythm. It's a traditional chant, Portuguese chant, and it was sang a lot by Zeca Afonso, who was the most important intervention. If you wanna call him like the Bob Dylan of Portugal, like he was the guy that was the voice of the revolution, and he sings this song a lot. He used to sing. He's passed away. He used to sing a lot in his concerts. It's a very traditional song, and as you can hear it kind of the vocal melody does a very complex path throughout the whole constant and it's hard. It's hard
Right.
at the same time.
Well, I think that's the key here, is that what people, this is the disservice that audio recordings do here, because João is actually playing and singing live at the same time, which we're in very short time going to have him demonstrate for us. But he's actually playing the drums with his hands, and sometimes you use a foot pedal as well, don't you, for some stuff?
I can do it.
And then singing live, and when you see it on stage, it's just a completely arresting experience, because he's such a great singer, but also there's the kind of spectacle of watching somebody play. I mean, the other person that comes to mind that does that is Anderson .Paak. I don't know if anybody's seen that Anderson .Paak Tiny Desk concert. As soon as it comes on, you think, how is that person's brain working that they can sing, vocalize, and play drums at the same time? So João, that is an amazing thing that you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. I just wanted to tell people a little bit about how we met, and maybe remind you as well, because I don't know if you remember, but we have a mutual friend who's also an incredible drummer and percussionist, Pedro Segundo. And Pedro and João were palling around one night in Dalston, and you came into the Dead Dolls Club when we were playing. Do you remember?
Yeah, of course I remember.
It's about must have been 8 years ago.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's amazing to have gotten, had the opportunity to work with João and do some projects together. And I was thinking, João, can you kind of tell people what's in store and what's coming up for you? Because I know that you're heavily involved in the Fado scene in Portugal. Maybe you can tell us a bit about that and what you're planning to do down there, and what's going on there.
So going back to the Dalston thing, so obviously I'm in a jazz funk band, and I wasn't at the time, I wasn't writing that much music, but I remember I met Pedro at Troy Bar, which is another spot in London where a lot of musicians meet and play. And that was the first time I met Pedro whilst he was playing. So we were playing together, and that's how we met. We met playing. So we didn't actually speak. He didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who he was. So it was literally like meeting when you play, which reminds me of those stories of like when you hear, certain musicians met other musicians whilst they were playing. I think that's such a special way of meeting people, because you're not being affected by their, who they played with or what they do, because you're just there with them there. And you then base your impressions by what you're hearing when you're playing. It's so special. And it was the same with you. Although I wasn't playing with you, it was more like I went and hanged out with Pedro in that place you were playing, and I was like, wow, this is so different because there's not that much stuff like that in London. That 8 years ago. Now you've got Kansas Smitty's. It's quite, the difference between a Kansas Smitty's and a Ronnie's is that at Kansas you have really raw talent that's being brewed at Kansas. At Ronnie's you've got more of a polished product that you go and see. Whilst at Kansas you're there witnessing brewing of young talent and people that just go in there because they want to experience a thing, and
Yeah, I think that was one of our slogans in the early days from Jack, was putting danger back in jazz. And at the time, everybody hated it because they thought it was just, but what you've just described there is exactly what I think he meant, which is the idea that it could all go wrong at any moment. And you're watching people, figuratively speaking, at the edge of a cliff, trying to figure out what kind of music they're going to express. And I think that's why people come to Smitty's again and again, because it's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And going back to relating this to my tradition and the jazz thing, the reason why I felt like having a collaboration with someone like you who has that massive musical library knowledge and is not scared of bringing those influences into something that's a new territory. Because what I'm doing with Rhythm and Fado, which is the name of my album, is I'm trying to find new territories whereby you can push Fado into a rhythmic platform, a rhythmic background, if you want, like on a rhythmic background, because Fado traditionally doesn't have any rhythm.
Well, explain to people what Fado is, because a lot of people will think that Fado is like Portuguese, Portuguese flamenco, but it has a really unique history and heritage, and it has a unique instrumentation. So maybe you could just lay out a little bit or paint a picture of what a kind of a Fado group looks like and how you're changing it.
So traditionally, Fado is sang by a voice of woman or a man, traditionally not playing any instrument, just singing, and accompanied by a Portuguese guitar and a viola, which is basically like a look like flamenco guitar, but slightly different. The difference between a viola and a flamenco guitar is that the viola has steel strings, whilst the flamenco guitar, it has nylon strings. So you got this really warm, on the flamenco, you have a really warm nylon string guitar. With the Fado, you've got a really attack and aggressive demarcation of the rhythm, a very, I don't know how you say that, a remark of the rhythm. So it's almost like he's the drum kit. The viola is the tempo setter for the Fado. So what then, I had a lot of folkloric background. I started Portuguese folklore dancing when I was like 6. And I was in a professional folklore group until I was 18. So I learned a lot about not only traditional chants, traditional dancing, traditional instruments, but also the bombo culture, which is such a fascinating culture in Portugal. There's, dozens of groups. There's something like 60 bombo groups in Portugal. And each group has like 40 members or 50 members, and they sound like
What's a bombo? What's a bombo?
So bombo is...
Do you have one? Oh, you have it.
I've got mine back here. So
show people what it looks like, because it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. If you can. Yeah, and the head is a piece of, what is it? Is it a sheepskin or something?
Yeah, so it's basically the I don't know if it's sheep or it's not sheep. It's
goat,
lamb, I guess.
What kind of sound does it? What sound does it make?
It doesn't. It has a very deep.
No, when it's alive. Is it like or is it a?
It's actually it's a yeah, I like that. That's a good I basically had these drums made after doing a lot of research and going through a lot of catalogs of different bombos. So there you've got like massive round ones, you've got small tiny ones, you've got ones with snares underneath, and this was the one I thought was the more appropriate for up playing. So because I play it standing up, so as you see, it has some legs and it's very tall and it has a very deep sound. So I use these bombos, and I'm basically taking that traditional Portuguese sound and groove and trying to merge it with my approach of playing percussion, and then adding that to Fado, and
Amazing.
that's rhythm and Fado.
So I think the best way to kind of solidify all that is maybe to ask you to play something, if that would be okay. I know that you don't have Joao's musical lineup is bigger than a Fado band. He usually uses electric bass, and he uses piano, and he uses guitar, and sometimes he books this really annoying clarinet player that I'm not a fan of. Oh, but he's frozen again. He's gotten offended. When Joao comes back, we're gonna get him to play us something. In the meantime, Darcy, do we have any questions in the chat?
Yeah, we've got a question from Gabrielle. It's actually for Joao, but we can pass it on to him when he returns. What the lyrics meant. I think it would be really interesting to understand a little bit more about. He referred to the composer of that song as the Bob Dylan of Portugal. To hear a little bit of a history about that composer's place in Portuguese history and why he was using that chant in particular to sort of tell a story. Joao, have we got you back?
I think the lyrics are probably like a Rolling Stone. That's probably what's going on there.
Like a Rolling Stone.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, just in Portuguese. Oh, he's back. He just had a toilet break.
We're back.
Joao, play us something. The anticipation is killing us.
I think that the internet here is not coping with the coronavirus.
It's okay.
No,
it's okay.
Luckily, you have two really funny guys to pass the time.
Joao, we had a question from Gabrielle about what the song that you played before was about. What you were saying.
If you could translate it for us.
So the last song that was played.
The Bob Dylan of Portugal.
So that's just, it literally is milho verde. Milho is yellow. What's it called? That yellow corn.
Oh, okay.
Right. Okay.
Green corn. So I'm basically singing green corn. Oh, near the green corn, I had a girlfriend. It's really traditional chants, really old chants.
That's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about the composer, like what his place in Portuguese history and Portuguese music history is?
There's no composer. It's just traditional. It's so Zeca Afonso. So the guy who.
Oh no!
It was going so well. Come back.
Am I here?
Yes.
Now, 1975. 1960. Oh my God! If someone hears me from Portugal, they're going to be very disappointed that I don't.
Well, that's likely because I think no one heard you for the last 30 seconds, so we may have got away with it.
Joao, play us a tune, man. Let's just jump right in with that.
I wanted to just quickly demonstrate your traditional rhythm, and then kind of tie in that with a different approach so that you can kind of hear the examples that I was on about. So
great.
is a traditional Portuguese, like.
Wow. That's traditional? Because that sounds so funky.
Yeah, tradition. So traditionally, it would be orchestrated by different bombos playing different parts. So you'd have part one being.
Right.
And then you'd have a snare drum part going. So then I'm kind of putting the two together.
So great.
So, for example, Milho Verde, you have a different rhythm, which is more. So these are actually played. They're a lot bigger traditionally, and they're played like this. They're called a doof. This is a smaller doof. Doofs, and they're played by dozens of women from the north of Portugal, and they're all singing very high-pitched voices, and they're all singing in symphony. So they're all at the same time singing the same melody. So how do you call that? In unison, not harmony. Yeah, in unison.
Oh, right. Okay.
And they're all singing very high-pitched unison melodies. So that's what Northern Portuguese chants are, and basically with what Zeca Afonso did was he sang it in his own ways. Those high melodies. You know, it'd be like. So it's interesting how.
You sound like a Northern Portuguese woman when you sing like that.
It's
beautiful.
I urge everyone to have a look into a Portuguese director who did a series called a música portuguesa a falar dela própria. A música portuguesa. We will try and get some. I'll put my links on Instagram for this particular channel, or I'll also lead into the Kansas Smitty's one. It's really interesting. So he's basically done a documentation of traditional people, like that are now 80 years old, who still dress up and sing and play instruments like back in the day.
Wow. Right.
A música portuguesa a gostar dela própria. Portuguese music liking itself. That's the name of the documentary.
Send it, and we'll share it.
Yeah.
Do you think we could coax you into playing and singing a tune to kind of wrap us up?
What would you wanna? What shall I? Shall I do?
Whatever you want. You call it.
Okay, let me.
In the meantime, while Joao's queuing that up, you've been listening to Live at 5, and make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and to click on the link below in our bio to see what we're up to. As always, we hope that everyone at home is healthy and happy and that this is brightening your day. Today we're with João Caetano, the percussionist from Macau, and also the percussionist in Incognito. And João, are you ready to lay something on us?
Let's do it.
All right, hit it.
Ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã. Ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã. No ventre da lua cheia, no jardim de um mundo novo. Ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã. Ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã. No ventre da lua cheia, no jardim de um mundo novo. Ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã. a esta ponte, de onde me vejo debruçado de um abismo. Sombra de sombra, sobra de um beijo, transformado em cataclismo. Ai, corpo que sonhas sem saber, ao sabor de uma gaivota, à procura de um Deus no céu, sem sequer lhes abrir a porta. Ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã, ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã, no ventre da lua cheia, no jardim de um mundo novo. Ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã. A esta ponte, de onde me vejo debruçado de um abismo. A um sobra de um beijo, transformado em cataclismo. Ai, sobre sonhos sem saber, ao sabor de uma gaivota, à procura de um Deus no céu, sem sequer lhes abrir a porta. Ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã, ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã, ai, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã, se eu pudesse nascer amanhã.
Yeah, man. Great.
Amazing.
Incredible. João, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. Really appreciate it, man.
Thank you guys.
And thanks also to you for tuning in, and thanks to our producer Darcy O'Connor. We'll be back tomorrow with we have Honey Bolton tomorrow.
We have Honey Bolton streaming in live from New Zealand, Tauranga in New Zealand, 20 minutes south of Auckland, at 5:30 or 6 a.m.
Amazing. We'll see you then. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you soon. Have a good night. Thanks again for listening to Live at 5. Remember to subscribe to this channel and click on the link in the description to see where you can donate, sign up for a Smitty's membership, or buy our records and merch. See you tomorrow. Thanks again.